Mr. Speaker, today Algoma announced it's laying off 1,000 steel workers, nearly a third of its workforce in the Sioux. Our thoughts are with them. The Prime Minister looked them in the eye and promised he would protect their jobs, that he would negotiate a win, and I quote, have a deal by July 21st, but it was a bait and switch that is costing people their livelihoods. On top of that, Liberals are hammering the steel mill with a higher industrial carbon tax. Isn't it bad enough that the Prime Minister broke his promise on trade? Why is he going ahead with an industrial carbon tax that will kill even more steel jobs?
Today's showdown in the House of Commons wasn't just another question period. It was a political earthquake, a moment where the entire country witnessed something that rarely happens in Ottawa. Pierre Poilievre walked in expecting an easy fight, and instead got overwhelmed by a government bench that has clearly decided they're done playing defense. And here's the part that should worry Poilievre the most: Mark Carney didn't even have to speak. His team did the work. His front bench delivered the blows. And they delivered them with precision, discipline, and a confidence that made it absolutely unmistakable. This is not the divided, disorganized Liberal Party of years past. This is a government that is united, sharp, and strategically prepared for battle. The opening moment said everything. Poilievre marched into the chamber like a man rehearsing his victory lap. He started with heavy drama, steel layoffs, broken promises, and dire predictions.
Before moving forward, do subscribe for Parliament updates.
He wanted outrage. He wanted chaos. He wanted a headline that blamed Mark Carney for everything under the sun. But instead of Carney standing up, it was Mélanie Joly. Calm. Focused. Completely unfazed. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't take the bait. She simply dismantled the entire premise of Poilievre's question with details he clearly didn't expect anyone on the government side to understand. While Poilievre tried to turn a serious issue, U.S. tariffs, into a political weapon, Joly did what strong leaders do. She brought clarity. She brought facts. She showed that the government is in direct conversation with AL's leadership, supporting workers, pushing back against unfair U.S. actions, and helping Canadian steel adapt and innovate rather than collapse.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Obviously, our thoughts are with the workers affected by the unjustified and unjustifiable tariffs imposed by the White House, and we'll continue to work with them as Algoma Steel is going through a difficult situation, to say the least. Mr. Speaker, my team and I have been in contact with Algoma's leadership team. We absolutely have every confidence in the Algoma workers as they're going through this hardship, and we will make sure that we support them as they're developing new products and also accessing new markets. We'll fight for these jobs, Mr. Speaker.
And the House felt the shift instantly. Poilievre's attack landed with all the impact of a paper airplane. Joly's response hit like steel. You'd think Poilievre would regroup. Reset. Maybe strategize. But no, he came back even louder, this time waving around Ontario Food Bank numbers as though he'd uncovered some explosive scandal. He tried to paint a picture of a country collapsing under Carney's leadership. Hunger, desperation, chaos, the usual doomsday script. But again, Joly didn't flinch. She reminded the House, and the millions watching, that Canada's economic decisions exist inside a global storm. That energy decisions in the United States directly affect this country. That carbon pricing isn't a gimmick, but a shield for Canada's strategic independence. Then came François-Philippe Champagne, and this is where the temperature in the chamber truly spiked. Champagne stepped up with the kind of decisive, clean, factual takedown that instantly froze Poilievre's momentum. He fired off the truth that Conservatives never want to hear. 22 million Canadians received tax cuts from this government. And the Conservatives voted against every single affordability measure that they now pretend to care about. The line that shook the chamber. When we protect workers, families, and this country, they stand in the way. You could feel the impact through the screen. It was the moment Poilievre realized his usual outrage routine wasn't working. His script was falling apart. And the government wasn't just responding, they were outmaneuvering him. But Poilievre kept digging.
Mr. Speaker, it's amazing to hear the leader of the opposition, because the first thing we did is to make sure that Canadians would have more money in their pocket, Mr. Speaker. We, in fact, reduced taxes for Canadians, 22 million Canadians. But you know what, Mr. Speaker, what's most disturbing for Canadians watching at home? At every step of the way, where we were there for families, where we were there for workers, where we were there for Canadians, they stand in the way, Mr. Speaker. That's the leader who voted against Canadian. On this side of the House, we believe in Canada. We're going to grow this country. We're going to work for families. We're going to protect the worker. We're going to build Canada, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader.
Now desperate, he lunged into housing, accusing Carney of taxing builders, crushing construction, and somehow hiding wealth offshore. It all felt rushed, stitched together, and dripping with frustration. Enter Gregor Robertson. Calm. Steady. Focused. He reminded the entire country that if Conservatives truly cared about housing, they would have voted for the most ambitious housing budget in a generation, $13 billion for affordability, $1 billion to fight homelessness, a GST break for first-time buyers. They voted against all of it. Robertson exposed the pattern perfectly. The Conservatives block the solutions and then scream about the problem. And by this point, the chamber wasn't just listening, it was watching Poilievre unravel. His talking points weren't landing. His accusations were being batted down with verifiable facts. His outrage looked performative next to the calm, coordinated strength of a government that finally seems to be hitting its stride.
Speaker, if the Leader of the Opposition and Conservatives actually cared about affordable housing, they would have voted for the budget with $13 billion for affordable housing. Mr. Speaker, they could have voted for $1 billion to fight homelessness and build supportive housing. These Conservatives stalled the first-time homebuyers GST break since June. They have no credibility on affordable housing, Mr. Speaker.
And this is the part that will define today's session in the history books. Mark Carney didn't need to respond. He didn't have to defend himself. He didn't have to step in. Because his ministers, Joly, Champagne, Robertson, did it for him. Powerfully. Confidently. Seamlessly. Poilievre came ready for a one-on-one fight with Carney. What he got instead was a coordinated government machine that exposed every contradiction in his record, every weakness in his argument, and every flaw in his strategy. And without raising his voice, without saying a single word, Carney proved something essential to Canadians. Leadership isn't noise. Leadership is depth. Leadership is a team that can govern, even in the middle of chaos. This wasn't just question period. This was a political turning point. If this was the setup, what happened next was the knockout round, the moment the entire country realized Pierre Poilievre is no longer debating a fractured government. He's debating a fully armed, fully coordinated, highly disciplined team that has clearly stepped into a new phase. The final exchanges of the day didn't just expose Poilievre's contradictions. They revealed something deeper, a widening gap in political maturity, preparedness, and credibility. The opposition leader came in trying to ignite outrage. The government walked in to govern. And Canadians saw the difference. As Poilievre grew louder, the ministers grew calmer. As he pushed conspiracy, they pushed policy. As he recycled the same talking points he uses at rallies, they delivered comprehensive answers grounded in real-world complexity. The contrast couldn't have been more dramatic. The moment that sealed the day came when Poilievre made his final attempt to land a blow. He threw everything into one long, frantic attack: housing starts, carbon taxes, builders being choked out, offshore accusations, even luxury wealth claims. It was less a question and more a desperate political Hail Mary. But Gregor Robertson ended it with a surgical counterstrike. No anger. No theatrics. No stumble. Just a clean, devastating truth. If Poilievre actually cared about Canadians struggling to afford a home, he wouldn't have voted against the very measures designed to help them. He wouldn't have blocked billions in housing investment. He wouldn't have delayed the GST break for first-time home buyers. he wouldn't have spent months trashing solutions while offering none of his own. Robertson exposed what many Canadians have felt for months. Poilievre isn't fighting for affordability. He's fighting for attention. He's not building solutions. He's building narratives. And today, those narratives collapsed under the weight of facts. One by one, the ministers pierced through the illusion he's been selling, that everything can be blamed on carbon taxes, offshore money, and mysterious promises. What they reminded Canadians is far more important. Real leadership means wrestling with complexity, not pretending it doesn't exist. But here's the twist most Canadians didn't expect. By the end of the session, it wasn't just Poilievre who looked isolated. It was the entire Conservative front bench, silent, slumped, watching their leader take hit after hit without a single successful exchange to show for it. This wasn't a debate. It was a dismantling. And that brings us to the real story of the day. For months, critics have questioned whether Mark Carney could unite a party that had been struggling with discipline and direction. They wondered if he could build a team capable of standing toe-to-toe with an opposition leader who thrives on conflict and chaos. Today answered that question. Carney didn't say a word. He didn't interrupt. He didn't even shift in his seat. He let the strength of his ministers speak for him. He let their clarity become his message. He let their unity become his proof of leadership. And that is what terrifies the opposition the most. Because for the first time since the last election, Canadians saw not just a prime minister, but a system working the way a government should. A front bench that is informed, coordinated, confident, and capable of defending a national vision without relying on personal theatrics. A leader who doesn't need to dominate the conversation to demonstrate control. A leader who trusts his team. A leader whose bench is deep enough to win the fight, without him even lifting a finger. Poilievre wanted a headline that said Carney cornered. Instead, he handed Canadians a headline that says exactly the opposite. He proved that this government isn't weak. It isn't drifting. It isn't fracturing. It's sharpening. It's organizing. It's preparing for a long, serious political battle, one where facts will matter, where strategy will matter, and where a team that knows how to govern will always beat a team that knows only how to shout. Today wasn't just a political defeat for Pierre Poilievre. It was a strategic defeat. A narrative defeat. A public perception defeat. Because when Canadians look back on this session, they won't remember the attacks. They'll remember the answers. They won't remember the outrage. They'll remember the composure. They won't remember the noise. They'll remember the leadership. And that is why today will be talked about for a long time, not as a moment when Mark Carney defended himself, but as the moment when his government proved it doesn't need him to. A team that's strong. A bench that deep. A leader that's steady. That's what wins long-term. That's what earns trust. And that's what Canadians witnessed today, unmistakably. If you're watching this and you want more sharp political analysis, more breakdowns of moments the mainstream doesn't fully explain, and more clarity on what actually happens inside Parliament, make sure you subscribe to Canada Today. Because moments like this, we break them down better than anyone.
Canada Debates.